ADR. Promoting dialogue.
It's 6 p.m. in Dakar and Bamako and 7 o'clock in Lagos. Good evening and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM in Dakar and around the world on wadr.org. Welcome to Newslink. First, our top stories. Malian court sentences former Prime Minister Sisi and others to prison over failed military equipment purchase contract. Burkina Faso's Transitional Assembly adopts a new bill authorizing Captain Traoré to run for office in future elections. AU's mission to Niger signals an olive branch to ensure regional stability through dialogue.
Today, whether we like it or not, the AES is a viable entity that must be engaged. Our destinies are inextricably linked.
And Benin's Electoral Commission cautions parties and candidates against violence as political campaign kicks off ahead of April 12th.
I call on all political actors to act responsibly so that this period is marked by unity and a shared commitment to the development of our country.
Let's stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
On the news, this is a more edit.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast. We'll begin this evening in Mali, where former Prime Minister Boubou Cissé and several figures from Ibrahim Boubacar Keita's regime have been sentenced to 20 years in prison. This is a verdict handed down by the Specialized Economic and Financial Criminal Chamber in the Paramount Embra trial. The case concerns a contract related to the purchase of military equipment in 2015. Augustin Koli has more details in this report.
After more than 3 months of trial, the National Economic and Financial Division of the Court of Appeal delivered its verdict in the so-called Paramount Embryo case. Of the 18 defendants, 5 received heavy sentences. These include former Prime Minister Boubou Cissé and 4 other individuals, including ministers and business leaders. They were each sentenced to 20 years imprisonment for forgery, use of forged documents, and misappropriation of public funds. These defendants, tried in absentia, were already subject to arrest warrants issued in October 2022, which remain in effect according to the court. 3 other defendants were sentenced to 7 years in prison each. Conversely, several defendants were acquitted due to insufficient evidence. The court also ordered some of the defendants to pay over 3.7 billion CFA francs, corresponding to the amount deemed unjustified. They will all have to pay 2 billion CFA francs in damages. However, the convicted parties have the right to appeal to the Supreme Court, which may uphold or overturn their sentences. As a reminder, this trial, which began in December 2025, concerned alleged irregularities in military equipment contracts concluded in 2015 between the Malian government and the company's Paramount and Embryo.
Augustin Koli presented that report as filed in by our Bamako correspondent Aliu Cham. More on legal matters, but this time in Burkina Faso, as a high court has delivered its verdict in a major embezzlement case after nearly 2 weeks of hearings. Former Minister Laura Zongo-Hien has been sentenced to 5 years in prison and fined 10 million CFA francs with an arrest warrant issued. The main defendant, Yake Kamil, received 11 years in prison and a heavy fine and has been taken into custody along with another co-accused. Several others were given lighter sentences, while several defendants were acquitted due to a lack of evidence. The case is part of wider anti-corruption efforts in the country. Meanwhile, members of the Transitional Assembly in Burkina Faso on Friday adopted a bill establishing what is to be known as the Charter of the Revolution. The text was unanimously approved by the 70 members of parliament and seeks to provide Burkina Faso with a strengthened institutional framework to guide the transition. Contrary to the Transitional Charter of October 22, junta leader Captain Ibrahim Traoré can run for office in the next presidential election. Abdullah Hassan reports.
The new bill passed on Friday mainly consists of 3 articles. The first endorses the adoption of the Charter of the Revolution. The second replaces the Transitional Charter of October 14, 2022, while the third specifies the terms of implementation. By adopting this law, Parliamentarians have formalized the political direction defined by the authorities in Ouagadougou, making the Popular Progressive Revolution the basis of governance during this period. The text also authorizes the transitional president, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, to run for office in the next presidential, legislative, and municipal elections, which should mark the end of the revolutionary period. The project also introduces significant institutional changes. The Transitional Government and the Transitional Legislative Assembly are now renamed the Government and the People's Legislative Assembly, respectively. Additionally, the new charter provides for a reorganization of the legislative body with elimination of representation for political parties and movements. According to the Assembly, this development aligns with the vision of the President of Burkina Faso, who announced on April 1, 2025, that the country is entering a phase of revolution in the context of insecurity and alternative political project.
Abdel Hassan filed that report crossing over to Niger. The African Union's High Representative for the Sahel, Dr. Mamadou Tangara, has concluded a consultative mission to Niamey. Tangara's visit forms part of a diplomatic strategy to strengthen relations between the continental body and the Confederation of Sahel State, AES. Experts describe the move as a tactical recognition of the region's evolving political landscape and a step towards renewing formal dialogue. Chris Faticho completes the story.
This mission marks a significant shift in the African Union's approach to the Central Sahel, following critical talks with President Assimi Goïta in Bamako. Dr. Mamadou Tangara proceeded to Niamey on a direct mandate from the chairperson of the AU Commission. The objective is clear: to break the diplomatic deadlock and renew formal dialogue with the AES countries.
Today, whether we like it or not, the AES is a viable entity that must be engaged. We live in a region where our destinies are inextricably linked.
According to the High Representative, the key to regional stability lies at the very heart of the Leptako-Gruma region. Dr. Tangara emphasized that long-term security cannot be achieved without a closer, more collaborative relationship with the authorities of the Central Sahel.
Solutions cannot come from elsewhere. It is up to us, the people of this region, to find a way forward.
While the AU is extending an olive branch, the path forward remains complex as the AES nations continue to assert their sovereignty and distance themselves from traditional regional blocs. Observers are waiting to see how this renewed will for dialogue will materialize into concrete cooperation in the coming weeks.
A report by our Niamey correspondent Yakuba Abibulai, presented by Christopher Aticho.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Guinea's Prime Minister Lansana Kouyaté has been appointed ECOWAS chief negotiator with the Alliance of Sahel State, AES. His mission will be to bring the two blocs closer together, especially since Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger officially left ECOWAS in January 2025. Experts say this will be no easy task, given the breakdown of political trust at the highest levels between the two blocs. We will bring you more details in the second half of the news. In the meantime, in Benin, the electoral campaign for the April 12 presidential elections officially kicked off today across the country. Candidates now have 2 weeks to convince voters. Saka Lafia, head of the Autonomous National Electoral Commission, SENA, has called for a constructive and issue-based campaign. Osmarima has the details in this report as compiled by WDL's Aziz Adam Sule in Cotonou.
Saka Lafia, the head of Benin's Electoral Commission, is calling for a peaceful election campaign based on the exchange of ideas.
The election campaign is by its very nature a period of intense political activity. It must be a space for the exchange of ideas, not a ground for pointless confrontation. That is why I call on all political actors to act responsibly so that this period is marked by unity, mutual respect, and a shared commitment to the development of our country.
While the opposition will not participate in the presidential election on April 12, the head of the Electoral Commission warns against hate speech and the spread of misinformation. Lafia calls on the media to play their role and disseminate credible information. On the organizational front, CENA seeks to reassure the public electoral materials are being deployed and more than 5,000 national and international observers are expected for the election, according to Saka Lafia. Q.
The Autonomous National Electoral Commission remains fully committed to conducting this process with transparency, impartiality and efficiency in order to protect our country from the excesses seen elsewhere. I want to reassure you the system is ready.
The first round of the presidential election is scheduled for April 12, 2026.
That was a report by our Cotonou correspondent Aziz Adam Suli and voiced by Usman Umar. Now, Ghana's President John Dramani Mahama has described the United Nations General Assembly's adoption of the country's reparations motion as a major diplomatic breakthrough. The resolution passed on Wednesday, March 25, calls for renewed global commitment to reparative justice for African countries and descendants of enslaved people, urging structured dialogue and concrete steps to address the enduring impacts of slavery. It secured 123 votes in favor, with the United States, Argentina, and Israel opposing, while 52 countries abstained. The United States termed the resolution highly problematic, despite acknowledging the injustice of slavery, citing concerns over beneficiaries. In a post on X on Thursday, March 26, President Mahama welcomed the outcome, noting it recognizes the trafficking and enslavement of Africans as among the gravest crimes against humanity. At the same time, Ghana's parliament has passed the Legal Education Reform Bill of 2025. This decision effectively ends the long-standing monopoly of the Ghana School of Law. The new law establishes a dedicated council to regulate and expand access to professional legal training in the country. From Accra, WDL's Nadi Day report.
A key feature of the reform is the opening up of the professional legal training to accredited universities, including private institutions, effectively ending the monopoly of the Ghana School of Law. The new law also introduces a law practice training course designed to equip students with practical legal skills. This will serve as a requirement for candidates before they sit a newly created National Bar exam, a standardized test for qualification to the bar. Presenting the bill in its initial stages last month, Attorney General and Minister for Justice Dr. Dominic Ayine said the reforms are aimed at promoting equal opportunity in line with Article 25 of the Constitution and addressing long-standing barriers that have limited access to legal education. The Majority Leader, Mahama Yarega, described the passage of the bill as the beginning of a new era, saying it will ensure fairness for all law students regardless of where they study.
We have today successfully passed the bill. We believe that this is the dawn of a new era where all students will be fairly treated. Whichever law school you go to, whichever law faculty you attend, all of us would end at the doors of the National Bar examination. All of us.
The bill, which received bipartisan support, now awaits presidential assent to become law. For WADR, Nadiri Tete, Accra.
In Nigeria, health workers are voicing strong opposition to a new regulatory bill before Parliament. They staged a protest in Abuja on Thursday, warning that the proposed law could disrupt the country's healthcare system and undermine professional autonomy. WDR's Abuja correspondent Yechin Sasechu has a story.
The protest, led by the joint health sector unions, JOHESU, took place at the Unity Fountain in Nigeria's capital, where workers expressed concerns over the proposed legislation before the National Assembly. The union says the bill could centralize regulatory powers and undermine the independence of other health professions within the sector.
No JOHESU! No!
Acting President of JOHESU, John Ali, says the union opposes provisions it believes could negatively affect healthcare delivery.
I believe that if you must amend any professional bill, such professional bodies should be contacted. They should be the one to make input to what they think is not right about their profession. And so regulation is primary in everything, because it is only as a professional group that you know where things are probably not right or things are right with your profession.
administration.
Also speaking, Johesu National Secretary Martins Egbanubi said the protest aims to draw attention to the potential impact of the bill on health workers and the broader healthcare system.
The National Assembly is called upon to reject these bills as currently articulated in the greater interest of peace and stability in the Nigeria health sector ecosystem. Is that our position? Yes!
The union maintains that while reforms are necessary, they must be inclusive and should not threaten the autonomy of other health professionals. For WADR, Yeche Nusasitu in Abuja.
You're listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM Dakar and online at wadr.org. Here is a reminder of the top stories. Malian court sentences former Prime Minister Cissé and others to prison over failed military equipment purchase contract. Burkina Faso's Transitional Assembly adopts a new bill authorizing Captain Traoré to run for office in future elections. AU's mission to Niger signals an olive branch to ensure regional stability through dialogue. And Benin's Electoral Commission cautions parties and candidates against violence as political campaign kicks off ahead of April 12th. And still ahead, we do have the guest interview and sports news. Please stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Don't forget you can listen to us live on wadr.org and follow live streamings on YouTube and Facebook. Let's turn attention now to Liberia, where the government has unveiled an ambitious one-year national action plan to drastically reduce maternal and newborn death. The initiative, launched in Monrovia on Thursday, focuses on strengthening healthcare infrastructure and improving emergency access for women and children. Our correspondent in Monrovia, Abraham Parker, reports.
The newly launched action plan outlines targeted, high-impact interventions aimed at delivering measurable actions in maternal and newborn deaths within 1 year. Speaking at the launch, Assistant Minister at the Ministry of State, George Masha, who represented President Joseph Boakai, said clear targets have been set to ensure tangible results.
By this launch, the government of Liberia aims to strengthen referral systems by improving transportation and communication for timely medical care. The Ministry of Health will lead the implementation of the plan, supported by the regular performance review to ensure progress and accountability. This effort marks an important step towards achieving universal health coverage.
Assistant Health Minister Dr. Taye Sakimo also underscored the urgency of the initiative, calling on health workers nationwide to align with the plan and to strengthen collaborative efforts.
With the power in investing and honor the stewardship of the Honorable Minister of Health, Dr. Louis M. Foto, I declare the 365 days of action under the theme Hands on Deck to End Preventable Maternal and Newborn Deaths launched and to be upheld and implemented across the 15 counties of Liberia.
The event brought together health professionals, students, government officials, and development partners, all united in the drive to end preventable deaths. As Liberia begins implementation, the plan is being seen as a critical step toward ensuring safe outcomes for mothers and newborns. Reporting for West Africa Democracy Radio, I'm Abraham Parker in Monrovia.
The Gambia's energy sector has seen a major boost with the launch of its first modern petroleum testing facility by Owl Surveillance Services. The lab is expected to end the country's costly reliance on neighboring Senegal for fuel quality certification. From Banjo, Sangdon Amendi reports.
Concerns had been mounting over the circulation of substandard and contaminated fuel in the country prior to the launch of the facility. Reports of vehicle damage and potential safety risks, including suspected links to recent car fire incidents, further heightened public anxiety. Citizens now hope the new laboratory will deter the importation of poor quality fuel and strengthen enforcement against violators.
Before they start to sell fuel, They should have a lab to test whether it meets the required standards and whether they have the right to sell it in the country or not. I really appreciate the step.
The new petroleum testing lab in the Gambia is, of course, a game changer for fuel test safety and quality.
Let them help us with more testing labs so that we can test the fuel and know whether this one is suitable with our vehicles or not.
Meanwhile, lawmakers in the National Assembly have repeatedly expressed frustration with the Public Utilities Regulatory Authority, PURA, over the lack of in-country testing capacity, underscoring the urgency of the new facility. Experts say the laboratory could also deliver broader economic gains, as reducing the need to send fuel samples abroad is expected to cut costs and speed up decision-making in the energy sector. Lamin Diba is an economist.
And now the Gambia is having petroleum products tested in the Gambia. So that decrease in cost of testing should have an impact on the pricing the government puts on its petroleum products.
However, the Gambia continues to grapple with challenges in its downstream energy sector, including heavy reliance on imports and vulnerabilities in storage and distribution. Equipped with advanced testing technology and staffed by trained professionals, the facility is expected to play a key role in strengthening the integrity of the country's energy supply chain. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Sangdona Mendy, reporting from Banjul.
Politics, analyses on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
In this segment, we now focus on the appointment of former Guinean Prime Minister Lansana Kouyaté as ECOWAS chief negotiator with the AES countries. His mission will be to bring the two blocs closer together, especially since Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger officially left ECOWAS in January 2025. This will be no easy task given the breakdown of political trust at the highest levels between the two blocs. Romaric Lucien Badusi, a lecturer and researcher in political science at the University of Parakou, Benin, provides an analysis of the appointment.
I believe that Mr. Lansana Kouyaté has a background that could be an asset in this mission. He is a seasoned diplomat with extensive diplomatic experience, having served as Guinea's ambassador on several occasions. He was Guinea's representative to the UN, the UN Secretary General's Special Envoy to Mali, and the OIF Secretary General's Special Envoy to Togo for the Inter-Togolese dialogue. And above all, it's important to remember that he was the Executive Secretary of ECOWAS, which is equivalent to what we now call the President of the ECOWAS Commission. He is a man with a very interesting profile for this type of mission.
This appointment comes after mediation effort by Togo, Ghana, and Senegal. So, how can all of this be harmonized for an effective understanding and collaboration between these two organizations?
I believe he won't cross the SNRLO border, but he will still try to capitalize on the initiatives already undertaken by the figures you mentioned. Today, despite the departure of these three countries, there is room for negotiation between the two blocs on the economic front. As you know, ECOWAS has established a free trade area. How will this measure, which increases the number of originating products, be managed? This is a question that needs to be debated. Regarding security, you know that ECOWAS is gradually establishing its Semba force, and one of the missions assigned to this force will be, above all, the fight against terrorism. Whatever one might say, there is a great geographical proximity, and the AES is the very epicenter of terrorism in our West African region. Therefore, it will not be possible to effectively wage this fight without collaborating between the ECOWAS Semba force and the AES forces. Another issue is the legal status of nationals from both blocs, and you know that ECOWAS has taken a number of measures for its citizens. For example, there is the question of visa exemptions, border crossings, and the question of exemptions from residency permits for residents. These are issues that need to be discussed. These are important issues they are trying to discuss in order to clarify the situation.
Can we imagine collaboration in the fight against terrorism, knowing that political trust is broken at that level?
Absolutely, you are right. One of Mr. Fiagrit's strengths at that level is that he comes from Guinea, a country whose relations with the AES countries isn't as strained as they are with other states. The AES countries have more or less strained relations with almost all their neighbors, with a few rare exemptions like Guinea, Ghana, and to some extent Senegal. So, the fact that Mr. Kouyaté is Guinean can also make his job easier. There you have it.
In the fight against terrorism, ECOWAS is refining its strategy around its standby force, while the Confederation of Sahel States relies on its unified force. How can these two forces collaborate on the ground?
First, we must succeed in re-establishing dialogue between the two blocs, because as long as we continue to discuss and engage in dialogue, it's always possible to find common ground. So I believe Mr. Kouyaté's mission will be to bring the two sides closer together to bridge the gaps. It will be necessary for the military elite of both armies to try to discuss and harmonize their positions and strategies. So the essential thing is, first and foremost, to reach an agreement in principle to collaborate in this fight.
But some ECOWAS countries continue to collaborate with France on security matters. France, in fact, could be having strained relations with the AES countries. Doesn't this risk hindering closer ties between the two organizations?
Yes. There are some countries that still harbor a deep resentment towards France. Now, those that continue to maintain strategic partnerships are, in a way, within their rights. Every country has the prerogative to define its foreign policy. But as you say, it's a subject that will inevitably be put on the table. Well, these are elements that will be addressed once dialogue is re-established between the two blocs. We will see. The essential thing is that trust is restored. Note that today, the three AES countries are gradually reconnecting with the United States, whereas a short time ago it was a rupture. One might even say a spectacular one. So even with France engaged in dialogue, many things are possible.
Romaric Lucien Badassi is a lecturer and researcher in political science at the University of Parakou, Benin. And in sport news, the International Olympic Committee says only biological females will compete in women's events from the 2028 Los Angeles Olympics. The IOC says eligibility will be determined through a one-time sex test based on medical expert recommendations. IOC President Kirsty Commentary says the move is aimed at ensuring fairness and safety in competition. Meanwhile, Senegal will go ahead with the presentation of the 2025 Africa Cup of Nations trophy before their friendly against Peru, despite being stripped of the title by the Confederation of African Football (CAF). The Senegalese Football Federation says the ceremony will take place before kickoff in a show of defiance as they continue the appeal to the Court of Arbitration for Sport. CAF had awarded the title to Morocco after ruling that Senegal forfeited the final. The dispute remains unresolved as the case heads to international arbitration. In the meantime, the Executive Committee of CAF will hold an emergency meeting on March 29 to address key issues affecting the game across the continent. Chaired by CAF President Patrice Motsepe, discussion will focus on recent appeal committee rulings that have sparked debate as well as the vacant Secretary General position following the departure of Veron Omba Mosengo. And that's it on this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM Dakar. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Maudo Juf and Ismaila Kamara for the technical support. Let's keep the conversation coming on all of our social media platforms. Coming up next is our opinion poll series. It's You Speaking, the repeat broadcast. I am Imo Edit. Good evening.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County,
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Nibe County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM.